leaders of this church and of the youth group respectively for having so much faith in me. Be honest with you, putting a whole lot more than I would allow to be put on myself. They have a lot more, I guess just a lot more faith in myself than I do sometimes, and for that, I thank them. Gonna start at John chapter 6, verse 5. It says, "When Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he saith unto Philip, Whence shall we buy bread that these may eat? And he said this to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do." How many times does God ask you a question, not because he's really concerned about what the final answer is going to be, but he wants to know what your answer is going to be? A lot of times God puts us in a situation not to see what's going to happen. He knows the outcome before we're ever in that situation, but a lot of times it's just to see our response. Philip answered him, 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, There's a lad here, which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes, but what are they among so many? And Jesus said, Make the men sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down. And likewise of the fishes, as much as they would. They had a little bit. They had 5 small loaves and 2 small little fishes. And they distributed not just a little bit, not just a small portion, as much as they would. As much as you want out of this, you can have, and there's still more. When they were filled, he said unto the disciples, Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above them that had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Jesus did, said, This is of a truth, that prophet that should come into the world. You can be seated tonight if you'll go down clapping your hands for God. I want to speak to you for a few moments tonight on a message that God put on my heart called Thankful for My Not Enough. Now, I think we've all been in a situation when you guys were little kids and your parents rather would take you to Walmart, or they take you to Kmart, or they take you to Hills. For those of you under the age of 25, Hills was the toy store back in the day. All right, pre-Walmart, all this big massive toy section, Hills is where the toys are. Now, enough of the history lesson, but how many have been taken down that toy aisle on your way out and you say, Oh, Dad, I want that car. I've done it. Mom, I want this Transformers toy. It's like, You're not getting a doll. It's an action figure, Mom! You go down this toy aisle and you see this thing in this big display, and it's got lights and it's got little flashing strobes all over the place and LEDs, and they make it look so good, and you ask your parents, Can I please have it? I promise I'll go home, I'll clean my room, I'll do whatever you ask. It doesn't matter. I want that Optimus Prime. And you beg them and you beg them and you beg them, and they keep saying no and they keep saying no, and you ask them why, and finally they look at you and they say, Look, if we could get it for you, we would, but we just don't have it. I'd love to be able to bless you with that toy, but I'm sorry, we just can't afford it right now. I've been there. I'll say this, I'm a 25-year-old grown man, and my wife and I go to Walmart or we go to Target, and I see a video game or I see something I want, and I'm saying, Please, Marisa, can we get it, please, and she says no, because she's mean, and I can say that because she's not here tonight. And if anybody tells her I said that, you're in trouble. My dad's already got his phone out texting my wife telling her what I said. We've all been in that situation, have we not? Where you want something, but you just don't have the means to get it. You've got this desire to get something, you want to possess it, you want to own it, you want to attain it, but you just can't get there. Now, I've been in that situation, and I think just about everybody here is in this situation or has been in this situation. We've all been there. You see, we always have a goal and we understand the means that we need to achieve that goal, and we understand the resources we have at our disposal. Now, a lot of times our goal may seem great, but we don't have the resources to cover the means. Am I right? How many times has this happened to you? You look around your house and you realize, and I've been in this situation, you start looking at the money you have and you start looking at the bills that are piling up. Do I want to pay electric or do I want to pay water? Do I need to make the mortgage payment or should I pay the insurance and just hope the bank doesn't call? Should I pay gas or should I pay electric? We've all been in this situation in the physical. And I've been in this situation in the physical quite a bit. But every now and then there's a time where you got to just look up and say, God, you know what? I've got a little bit. I've got not enough. But here it is. You see, a lot of times when we have our not enough situation, we want to get down in the dumps and we want to start having our little pity party over here. God, I don't know what I'm going to do. And we want to sit down and we want to cry, and we want to bawl, and we want to snot like a little baby because that's what we are. We're humans, and sometimes we can act like a selfish, spoiled little baby who just wants to say, gimme, 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 gimme. But every now and then, when we find ourselves in that not enough situation, we have to walk up and we can't say, God, look, here's what I need. God knows exactly what you need. It's time for us to stop going to God and crying and begging and claiming about what we need. God knows exactly what we need. It's time to go to God with a little bit of what we have. And I know that it's not enough. I know that our praise and our worship is never going to be enough to truly honor God for all He's done for us. I understand that the things we can say and we can offer and we can give to Him will never truly suffice to make up for the sacrifice He gave to us. But that little bit, when you start to come up and lay that little bit on the altar, when you start to say, God, I know there's 5,000 people here and this is all I got, but here, take it. You can do something with it. Do your thing. It's time for us to say, you know what? I've got 2 little mites that I can rub together, 2 cents, but I'm putting it in the offering. And you understand I gave more than any person in this place because it's all I had. Elijah walked into a city, and there was a widow. And God told him what to do. And he walked up to this widow and began to talk to her. And he said, look, I'm the man of God. I'm here to do a job, but I'm hungry. Who's ever been hungry? No, put your hands down. I didn't say who's been hungry. I said who's been hungry. Y'all ever been hungry? Painful hungry, where you're so hungry that anything, it doesn't matter if you like the food or not. You'll eat it because you're that hungry. I got news for you. When I first got married, I got sick of ramen noodles and Tony's Pizza so fast you would not believe it. I was hungry. Not hungry, hungry. And Elijah walked into this town and said, woman, I'm hungry. Make me a little bit of a cake. And she said, look, I know who you are, and if I could, I'd do it, but I just don't have it. She said, I've got this little cruse of oil, and it's about to run dry. And I've got this barrel of meal, but there's just a little bit at the bottom. There's not enough for you. There's not even enough for me. I'm going to make a little cake. Me and my son are going to split it. We're going to eat it, and then we're just going to sit around and wait to die. But that prophet looked at her and said, I tell you what, if you give me that little bit, stop worrying about how much you have left to give. Stop worrying about how much you think you need. Stop worrying about the things that you think will make you successful. Stop worrying about the things that you need to be prosperous, and just give the man of God your little bit. So we know the story. She goes in, she bakes this little cake for Elijah, the prophet, and he eats it, and he goes his way. And from that day forward, that woman still had a barrel that was almost empty of meal. And she had a cruse with just a little bit of oil in it. Now, notice the Bible doesn't say that she went home and she had shelves full of food to eat. She had cabinets And she had closets full of oil. It doesn't say that. It says she had a cruise with a little bit of oil. And every time she walked into her home and she began to cook something she didn't see in abundance, she saw a little bit. And she probably poured that oil out thinking, that doesn't look like enough. And every time she took that cup and she put it into the barrel, she scraped the bottom of that barrel, and you could hear it just dragging across the bottom of that barrel because there was so little in there. But because she gave her not enough, God blessed her with an abundance beyond which she could ever use. The Bible says until the day she died, she had oil and she had meal. Not because she was selfish and thought about what she needed, but because she was able to give up that little bit to God. There's a story of I don't want to use the word great, but of the military leader that's now famous, Napoleon Bonaparte. He was sweeping over nations left and right. Anywhere he went, anything he wanted, he could just go and take it because his army was big enough and bad enough. Well, there's a story that comes out of 1799. He was coming to Feldkirch, Austria, which is a little tiny nothing town in the middle of nowhere in Austria. And his army was coming up over the hill, and this tiny little town had set out people to watch for his army. And when they got close enough to see, they knew they had a decision to make. And it just so happened that the day that they decided to roll up was the day before Easter. So, that Saturday night, just before Easter Sunday, a group of leaders in that community met at their church, and they said, here's our choices. We can stay here, we can wave the white flag and just hope they don't kill us all. We can run away with our tail between our legs and hope we're faster than them, or we can stay here and we can fight. Those are our options, people. They decided to stay, but they weren't going to wave the white flag. The reason being, the pastor of that church stood up and said, look, tomorrow is Easter Sunday. We don't need to run. We need to honor what we've promised God. They had church. At the end of that service, Napoleon's army was rolling over the mountain. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of French soldiers ready to just pounce on this town, burn it to the ground, and you'd never know it existed. It will be completely wiped from history. But because one pastor got up and said, you know what? We're not going to run. God, we can't fight these people. But what little bit of strength we have is going to hold right here in this place. At the end of that service, when they let out, the church bells begin to ring. And when the church bells begin to ring, something happened. You see, this massive French army that came up heard these church bells ringing, and they began to hear a rumbling and didn't know what it was. And they thought that the Austrian army had showed up. The presence of God rang from one end of those hills to the other and completely chased out the French army. Not because a group said we're going to stand and fight because we're big and bad enough to take anybody on. Not because they said we can stop the French army, we can keep our town, but because they said, God, we've got a little bit of strength. We don't know what you can do with it, but we're going to leave it right here. Whatever you see to do with it, feel free. Do your thing, God. It's time for us to just step back a little bit and say, you know what, God? Do your thing. It's time for us to step back and say, God, I'm sick of seeing my problem. We all face problems. Every one of us do. But it's time for us to stop complaining about our problem to God. God knows all about your problem. Always has, always will. But as a little bit of an example, Brother Jack, you could have said, God, my ankle hurts, my foot hurts, I'm going to stay at home. Can't get around too well. Can't really walk, it hurts. I've been there, I know what it's like. But because he said, you know what? I've got a little bit of strength in this foot. I might be limping when I come into this place. It might be a little sore and it might be a little tender, and I might have to lean on the pew like this, but God, I'm going. Because that's my little bit. Here's my little bit, God. The next thing you know, he's jumping up and down and he's running back and forth across this aisle because he had a little bit that he gave to God. Every one of us here has got a little bit. Your little bit, I'm going to be honest with you, is not enough. Your little bit that you decide to give to God is never going to be enough to overcome your situation. But God doesn't really care about the amount that you have, but it's what He can do with it. If He can take 2 fish and 5 slices of bread and feed an entire mountainside full of people, He can move in your situation. Because you may say, God, there's not enough money. He says, give me what little you've got and I'll bless you. Because you may say, God, I don't have enough health in my body. Show up anyway. When the doctor says he can't do a thing for you, I know somebody that can. When the doctor says the cancer won't go away, I know somebody that can get it out of your body. When your insurance company says we're not covering it, I know a God that can intervene and move. When you get into a situation where the only possible way out is God, the only way out is God. We take things into our own hands. We try to make something out of nothing. We try to handle everything ourselves. Where does it get us? But I know a God. I said, I know a God who can take my little bit. Understand, I don't have a whole lot. Understand that sometimes putting that little bit of offering in, knowing that you're just praying to make it home because you don't have enough gas. I've been there. Understand that your little bit may not seem like a whole lot, and you know for a fact it's not enough. But I know a God, and you know a God, who can take your not enough, who can say, I'm Jehovah Jireh. I'll take what little bit you've got. I will provide. I will take your not enough. I'll make it more than enough. Give me that little bit of praise. It's time for us to be thankful of our not enough. It's time when we have enough, if you would stand across this place. It's time for us to take those times when we have not enough. Don't sit in your pew. Don't sit at home feeling bad for yourself. When you have not enough, it's time to walk up and say, God, you know what? I don't have a lot. I don't have enough, but I'm thankful for what I have. That's when miracles begin to unfold. That's when financial prosperity and blessings start to fall out of the sky from nowhere. That's when your body goes from being sick to being healed. That's when the doctors can't find the trace of cancer anymore. That's when the doctors run tests and can't find what was wrong with you before anywhere in your body. Not because they gave you some magic pill, not because a doctor performed some operation, because let's be honest, I have seen God heal some people in situations where doctors were lost. I've seen a man sit in a wheelchair right here after being told for years that he would never, ever get out of that wheelchair, stand up, and walk. I've seen people come in who have been told by doctors, your cancer will never go away. We'll do what we can to keep you comfortable, but eventually it's just going to pretty much take over your body and you'll die. And I've seen them come in and hold reports of clean health. Whatever your need is tonight, whatever your situation is tonight, doesn't matter if it's financial, doesn't matter if it's physical, doesn't matter if it's spiritual, because God's bigger than all three. Whatever your situation is tonight, I invite you to come to this front. Don't feel bad about it. Don't tell God that you don't have enough, but come up and say, God, here's what I've got. God, here's what little bit I've got. It's not enough to take care of my situation, but it's enough for you to do something with. God, it may not be enough to completely take care of everything I need, but here it is. Intervene. Do your thing. I want everybody in this place to come forward tonight and worship as they begin to sing, because we know a God that's greater than any need that we ever have.